I want to start by saying how thrilled I am to be here. It's exciting, but terrifying to talk after you, Vito. But I wanted to say that for me, getting to work with the MTA was kind of a dream come true, because I had always wanted to make public art. But I suffered at that time originally from what I thought was pretty much of a fatal handicap, which was that I was a painter. So I was actually reduced at the time that I was applying to things at the MTA to painting little landscapes all over graffiti in the town in a desperate attempt to do public art all by myself. And I have to say that doing this, as one of the graffiti artists said, he said, "Well, what are you doing? It's too small. You can't even see it from a car. You know, where's your crew?" So, you know, it was all obviously very misguided. So while I was working on this project, I suddenly realized that you could apply to the MTA to actually do something in a subway station. And I immediately applied and was incredibly fortunate to be asked to submit a proposal. And you know, you can't imagine my delight. This was in 2001, and I just really couldn't believe it. I thought, I can't believe I'm a finalist, this is incredible. So I sat there and I thought, well, this is my one big chance, you know, I've got to just knock their socks off. And I thought, well, what would I always want when I'm in a subway? And because I really feel that, you know, public art is about trying to see what a situation kind of secretly desires. And it's also a chance to do something for everyone. And it's you know, the thing that's sort of depressing sometimes about making work that is sort of more gallery oriented is that you're essentially producing kind of wallpaper for the rich a lot of the time. So there's a lot of charm in being able to reach a wider audience. And so I thought, if I was in a subway station, you know, what would I like to see? And I thought, well, I've always been claustrophobic, and I've also have an incredibly bad sense of direction. So I would actually like to know where I am, and I would really also like to be able to see out. So the proposal that I made for the MTA, which was for the Queens Plaza subway station in Long Island City, was essentially to fill the entire mezzanine with a 360-degree view of what you would see if you were not underneath the station, but instead you were a couple of flights up. So I climbed up all these fire escapes and buildings and took photographs with a compass and then tried to map it all onto the station. And that was my proposal. And at the time that I did it, by the time I took the photographs, it was just after 9/11, so there were tons and tons of American flags. So the piece then got built, like Vito says, about 4 years later, suddenly in a tremendous hurry. It's always a lot of time, and then there's suddenly a lot of hurry at the end. And it was made by a mosaic fabricator in Mexico called Colorinas, which was a completely fascinating and new experience for me. They showed up, and we, you know, with all these sort of pieces of mosaic stuck to paper, which they then, you know, put into concrete, set on the walls. And what you have here, you can see, is a 360-degree view. This is the view sort of basically across the bridge. The station is right next to the part of the 59th Street bridge that sort of hits Long Island City. And here you have the view of Manhattan, which the whole piece is about 90 feet long. You can see a little bit of the Citibank building, and on the left, one of the many American flags in the piece, which was kind of fascinating to see, you know, so many years after 9/11, because by that point, people were like, well, it's an oddly sort of patriotic piece you've made here, Ellen. And I said, no, the time that I made it, this is what the city looked like, and which led me to realize that I created a piece that actually meant something slightly different from what I'd anticipated. It wasn't just a place finder or a way of, you know, giving people some light and air, but it was also basically recorded a moment in history. It recorded, you know, what that part of the city looked like in 2001. I mean, already looks incredibly different. There's a lot of new construction. And the other thing that's interesting to think about is that a lot of people say, well, it's so interesting, the buildings are so low down and there's so much sky. Was that really just so that, you know, people would have this sense of openness? And of course it was in part, but it was also because I desperately had this megalomaniac desire to cover every inch of the station. And I was talking to the mosaic fabricators, and I said, well, they said, well, no, there's no way you can stretch the budget to cover the entire station. And I said, well, what if it's mainly all one colour? So that was the solution. And the piece was called Look Up, Not Down. And the way it's done, if you actually exit through any of the exits, you'll be where the mosaic tells you, well, you would have been in 2001. In some cases now it's becoming wildly inaccurate.